Greetings, people of the interwebs. Jake here, and I just got done seeing Justice League, which I imagine for most people, this has been one of the most anticipated movies of their entire lives. Not just comic book readers, but in particular DC fans, because and even for myself, because as a kid, I grew up watching the Justice League show, and absolutely loved it. That along with the Batman animated Batman and Superman shows were definitely my gateway into the DC world and universe with the characters and all that stuff. So, and here's the thing. So this movie, I'm gonna be honest, I was not super excited about, just because of the massive letdown of Batman vs Superman for me personally, and also Suicide Squad. Which, even though I don't outright dislike the movie, because there were fun moments in it. Like, it was definitely more enjoyable than Batman v Superman for me, but just as a movie, it was not very good. But then Wonder Woman, I thought was great. It's definitely the best DC EU movie so far, and so I don't know. Like, it's one of those things where even though I love Man of Steel and then Wonder Woman, I thought were both those movies are great. But it seems like when it comes to the team up movies, this whole DCU thing just can't quite get it. So I was very apprehensive about Justice League because the trailers, I thought, though none of them were bad by any means. They just were kind of underwhelming. I'd see the trailers and I'm kind of like, okay, so Justice League is coming out. Trailers aren't bad, but it didn't get me excited. So basically, going into this movie, I was kind of intentionally going in with like the lowest possible expectations. Mostly just because I still have a bad taste in my mouth from Batman vs. Superman. So, having seen the movie, I will say that it's just okay. I guess for me, like, the trailers did a really good job representing this movie. It's not, like, I wasn't overwhelmed with anything. I wasn't underwhelmed. It was just okay. Like, it kind of, there aren't really any outright negative criticisms about the movie that I can really give. There aren't kind of like, I don't know, I guess the typical things like, weak villain, a little too much CGI, a little CGI heavy. But I feel like that's just kind of typical, criticism and nitpicks you're going to hear, especially in these kind of blockbuster movies, whether it be a comic book movie or whatever. So, I don't know, like, outside of like kind of that stuff, there really aren't a whole lot of just glaring problems with this movie. You can definitely tell that it was filmed basically by two different directors because unfortunately Zack Snyder wasn't able to finish like post-production with the movie because of the tragic loss of his daughter. So that's when Joss Whedon came in and kind of finished up with the movie and did a lot of reshoots and rewrites. So there are definitely some kind of clunky moments where you can kind of tell that like one person started this and then the other someone else came in to finish up. But it's not big enough to where it kind of takes you out of the movie, or at least actually, oddly enough, it took me out of the like Batman vs Superman with the weird editing in that movie took me out more than Justice League, and Justice League was basically directed by two different people. So I'll give them that. Like, I think they did the best with the situation that they were given. But even I don't know. Like, I have this kind of weird situation with Justice League because again, it's not bad by any means. It's also not great by any means. It's fun. Like that's one thing I can give it. But I think that's also, in a way, kind of a problem, though. Because this is Justice League. This is the very first Justice League movie we've ever had. This is the first time we've seen, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, Aquaman, Cyborg, all in the same movie together. And the best that Warner Brothers could come up with is just a fun movie. Now again, fun is it's not bad. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but honestly, I think this movie should have been great. For so many different reasons, because one, if they really wanted to compete with Marvel, which they do, you gotta do the best that you possibly can. And to a degree, I do think that they did the best that they could, again, especially considering all the things that have gone wrong with the production of Justice League and all that stuff. So I think that overall this movie turned out well with all that in mind. But I really just wish this movie was great, just because I want the DCEU to be on the same level as Marvel, if not better. Just because I love this whole golden age of comic book movies that we're living in, and I want it to continue. But really the only way this is going to continue to thrive is if, all these different movies, whether it be the MCU, the Fox Marvel movies, or the DC movies, they have to not just do, like, a kind of fun, entertaining movie. They need to change it up so that way it's fun and entertaining, yes, but there's more to it than just kind of like, oh yeah, fun action, I like the characters and stuff like that, and then, 2 weeks later you completely forget about the movie, because it just didn't leave an impact. And I feel like that's kind of how Justice League is going to be for me, where, I obviously don't regret watching it. I did have fun with it, but I think in just a few weeks, I'll kind of be like, oh yeah, right, Justice League came out. And it's just not going to have a lasting impact. And even though I didn't like Batman vs. Superman all that much, that actually had a lasting impact on me. Not necessarily just because I didn't like it, but for all the crap that I've given Batman vs. Superman, there's one thing that I will give it, is, for better or worse, they tried something different. Now, that different direction, that different thing that they were trying to do, not all of it worked. Again, just for me personally, there are a lot of concepts and ideas and themes. There are a lot of things in Batman vs. Superman that I thought were great. Again, conceptually, there were a lot of things that I thought were great. It was just poor execution. And again, even Man of Steel, I thought that movie was great. The fact that they kind of wanted to do a different Superman, where it's more of a character study of this alien living on Earth who's trying his hardest to be human, even though he knows he's an alien, and just trying to figure out where he belongs in the world. And I thought that was great. That was such a cool concept. We've definitely never seen that in a movie. We've seen that in the comics before, but in a movie, I thought that was a very kind of bold choice to make for especially the beginning of this DCEU. So that's one of the reasons why I think Man of Steel worked for me personally, why I think it's a fantastic Superman movie. And then, Batman vs. Superman, I like a lot of the concepts that they had. And, again, for better or worse, they tried something different. Not all of it worked, but I can at least, again, it's at least commendable that, okay, they're just trying to do something different. Whereas Justice League, again, it's I don't know, I feel like it's kind of a double-edged sword, where yes, it's good that this movie is definitely, I'll tell you, on a technical standpoint, it's a better movie than Batman vs. Superman, and again, it's a lot more fun, it's a lot more enjoyable and entertaining, but again, that's also kind of the downside, is that's all it is. It's just kind of like a fluffy blockbuster movie, where it's kind of like, oh yeah, that was fun, and that's about it. So, I don't know, it's just this weird kind of conflicting, emotions that I have going on with Justice League. Because again, I liked it fine, and it's definitely a better movie than Suicide Squad or Batman vs. Superman. But at the same time, I'm just kind of left just kind of saying, yeah, it's just okay. Because really, there just weren't a whole lot of scenes that really stood out. Because even in Batman vs. Superman, there are a lot of scenes that I thought were great. They looked like they were just ripped straight from the comic books, and just visually is very appealing. And one thing that I will give this movie though is, even though it did feel a little rushed, especially with the team all coming together, I thought their chemistry and their banter with each other was pretty good. I would have liked a little bit more conflict with the characters, because there are moments where they have conflicting ideas, where one person's kind of like, oh, well, we should do this, and then another character or characters are kind of opposed to that idea, and then it gets resolved kind of immediately, rather than kind of let that let that conflict kind of go on, because I feel like that'd just be a bit more realistic, that this is the first time these people are working together, and the world is at stake, So I feel like I don't know, but I don't know. I guess on the flip side, you could say, well, there's clearly a bigger problem at hand. So yeah, they would try to let petty arguments, they would drop that and focus on the bigger picture at hand. Um, so I don't know. Again, that's probably more of a nitpick than like a major issue or anything like that. But and because I know a lot of people are saying that like this is a step in the right direction for the DCEU, and in a way it is, because I do think, in a way it's kind of a step in the right direction, but I don't know if this step in the right direction is, I don't know, because again, it's kind of like, is this a step in the right direction for just being more entertaining and possibly getting more, like, doing better financially? Not to say that, like, any of the DC movies have done poorly, but, like, there's no reason that Batman vs. Superman shouldn't have cracked, like, $1 billion, because that was the first time we saw the DC Trinity in the same movie. And same thing with Justice League. Justice League, should make $1 billion, like the Avengers, both Avengers movies did. And I think even Captain America Civil War, and if it didn't get close to $1 billion, or if it didn't cross $1 billion, it got pretty damn close. But there's no way this movie's going to crack $1 billion because, one, I think a lot of people are just kind of very wary of the DC movies because of like the Rotten Tomato score, which, to be fair, I don't think it deserves such a low score, even though this film, again, like I said, is by no means great. It doesn't deserve like a 37% or whatever it's at right now. It needs to be at least in the high 50s or 60s. Like, I think it's passable. Like, put it like at least, because I think fresh is like over 65 maybe. I think it's at least fresh. So I think that is a little unfair that it's got such a low score, and I do think that is going to hurt it at the box office because most people are a lot more conscientious of what critics say, and Rotten Tomato scores and stuff like that, or scores on IMDb and other websites, because most people only go see a handful of movies, so they're gonna more likely spend money on the ones that have a good score, good ratings, and all that stuff, rather than take a chance on a movie like Justice League that may or may not be good for them. So it is a shame that this movie's probably not going to do as well as it should, and I've actually been hearing that so far, it's the lowest grossing DC movie. Which, again, it's a damn shame, because even though this movie is by no means great, it's Justice League. This should make easily $200 million opening weekend. And, maybe it will make $200 million, I don't know. Hopefully it will at least make, or, 150, I think would be, better. But, yeah, that's kind of unfortunately where we're at with... And a lot of this, I think, is just the... Not, a lot of people blame Zack Snyder and stuff like that, which I think is a little unfair to a degree. Because a lot of it just comes down to the studio. Warner Brothers clearly didn't have a plan. They just kind of were like, we gotta compete with Marvel, just, Batman vs. Superman, they fight each other, and then they gotta form the Justice League, there we go, and then we'll announce a bunch of other movies, get people excited, but we literally have no plan at all. And it still feels like they're just throwing darts at a dartboard with characters, and... they're just kind of like, Deathstroke, we make a Deathstroke movie, make a Shazam movie, make a Black Adam movie, and it seems like they're just conflicting. Like, one minute they're kind of like, yeah, all this is interconnected, and it's going to be a massive cinematic universe, and then other times they're like, yeah, actually, this one, that one, and that one, they're not going to be connected, or maybe they'll be connected, I don't know, because we clearly have no clue. We're just scrambling around and hoping for the best. So I think that was just the biggest problem from the get-go, is just basically they started with Man of Steel, and I think they had, maybe, like, talks, or, they probably wanted to do a cinematic universe, but again, it was kind of just like, let's just do Man of Steel, and then we'll see where that goes. And, what was supposed to be Man of Steel 2 turned into Batman vs. Superman. And I don't know, like, I do wonder if, because again, this movie I think will do well financially regardless of what it does opening weekend. It'll make its money back. But I still want to know if this will continue, like if Warner Brothers will continue going forward with like a Justice League 2, or if, because really the only other movie that we know for sure is happening, like that's already in development, is Aquaman. There's some others that I think are in like kind of pre-production, like they've got like some scripts going, they've got like some casting, like Shazam, Wonder Woman 2, and all that. But I don't, and I'm sure they'll probably do some of these movies, but I don't know if they're really gonna focus on like doing another Justice League movie, or if they're just gonna focus on doing standalone movies and maybe wait to connect them later, or just kind of be like, look, we tried the whole connected universe thing, didn't pan out the way we wanted to, so we're just gonna focus on standalone movies and then try and do like a extended universe a few years down the road. So I'm really curious to see what they do, because some of the higher ups at Warner Brothers even said that they're going to wait to see what Justice League does before they go forward with anything else. But it really is a bummer that this movie isn't getting as well received as it should, and that this movie just wasn't great, because this movie really should have been. And I don't know, like it's just one of those kind of, in a way, bittersweet moments, because yeah, it's definitely better than some of the other DC movies, but it just feels very safe, because again, Warner Brothers have always been very reactionary, because obviously a lot of people were complaining that Batman vs. Superman was too dark and too gritty, which of all the problems with that movie, that was like the bottom of the barrel. And so, of course, they were kind of like, oh shit, we can't do dark and gritty anymore. Make it fun, make it lighthearted and funny. And the humor, for me, didn't really work. Like, a lot of people are saying that, like, Ezra Miller's Flash kind of, like, stole the movie. I didn't think so at all. Like, I didn't dislike him, but I just kind of thought he was trying too hard to be like, hey, look at me, I'm the funny guy. And I know that, like, in the comics, the Flash is usually the more comical, kind of lighthearted character in the Justice League, but, I don't know, most of the humor just felt a little, like, it didn't feel very natural. It just felt a little bit like, hey, say something funny right here, so that way, we can show the people, it's kind of like, hey, we can be funny too, like Marvel. So, yeah, for me, he didn't really do, like, he didn't really leave much of an impression. I think Wonder Woman was probably the standout. Like, I think she was, Gal Gadot was just, fantastic in this movie. And everyone else, like, not, I thought they did fine. Like, nothing really bad to say about any of the other actors or anything like that. I just kind of, except for maybe, like, I wish they'd given them a bit more to do, because Cyborg was kind of just the guy that's kind of like, guys, I know how to, like, defeat Steppenwolf, just kind of fight while I plan this out and stuff like that. And then Flash, yeah, I don't know. There's just a lot of things that I think they just could have done a lot better. And maybe it was just because the studio mandated that this be under 2 hours. But again, at the same time, I don't know if making this movie longer would have made it any better. Because Batman vs. Superman was like 2.5 hours, and that movie didn't really work. So, honestly, like, I was hoping I'd have a bit more of a definitive, I guess, opinion or something like that on this movie by the end of the video, but I'm still kind of left conflicted with my thoughts. Because I really wish I could say something more than just, yeah, it's okay, it's fun, it's entertaining. But that's kind of really all I can say about the movie for the most part. Because there just wasn't enough standout scenes or moments that kind of makes me like, oh yeah, that was a great scene. It kind of helped, because again, Batman vs. Superman, not a very good movie, but there are a lot of scenes and moments where I'm like, okay, that's memorable. I really like that. Whereas this it was very middle of the road. Nothing really stood out. Nothing really, glaringly bad. Just it was fine. So. I guess that pretty much wraps this up. Hopefully you all have enjoyed, and let me know what you all thought about Justice League in the comments below, because I'm really curious to hear what you all think. Because, again, it seems like this movie's going to be another kind of divided film, where half the people say they like it, and then the other people are just kind of like, nope, didn't work for me. And again, it sucks. Because Warner Brothers, DC really needed to win, like, again, a great movie to kind of really bring people back and be like, okay, I have faith in DCEU again. And some people have, actually, with Justice League. Like, I've seen some friends and stuff like that, like on social media, saying that they've got a little bit more faith, which is fine. Like, I'm glad that this has restored their hope. And I wouldn't say that this has hindered or restored my hope, because again, it's just fine. So I mean, I'll still watch future DC movies. Obviously, I'm gonna hope for the best. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's restored my hope or hindered my hope or anything like that. It's just okay. But before I wrap this up, I did start a new podcast on here on the channel. Just kind of in the meantime, like just something I do whenever, and in between, like whenever me and the Pasty Pale gang get back together, just because it's been really hard for us to get together because of our work schedules and all that stuff. But basically, it's just where me and my guests talk about some of our favorite traveling experiences, whether it be domestic, international. In the first episode I did, had a couple friends over, and they talked about their road trip across the U.S. It's very lengthy, but I think it's well worth the listen, just because it was a lot of fun, just hearing their experience traveling across the U.S., and hopefully it'll inspire you all to go on a road trip of your own. And then, of course, my other podcast, Shogun's Gateway to Anime, which you can find on Podbean. We're finally back. We were on a bit of a hiatus as well, just because of my co-host recently had his first child with his wife. So obviously they've been busy with that. But we're back. We did episode 8 Friday, so that is now up on Podbean. I'll leave a link in the description below so that way you can check that out. It's kind of just a recap of what's been going on with us since our last episode, which I think was back in July. Just some of the anime series we've been watching since then, and ones that we're currently watching. So, check that out. Leave feedback on, this here video on Shogun's Gateway to Anime and the new podcast, which as of right now I'm just calling it Travel Talk because I couldn't really think of a cool, clever title or anything like that. So, yeah. Until next time, everyone. Cheers.